The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
Excuses, and more excuses, and I gave a nice rundown. I've been explaining it many days in a row, and it's becoming easier and easier for me to find the words. So I'm repeating myself for the people that haven't heard this yet. This is really like the solution to all your confusion. It's the solution to your problems and to also the problems in the world. Not just understanding, but also acting upon the understanding, which is what we call responsibility. So I'm going to give you a little rundown explanation. When you were a child, you always try to make sense of the world, and you look at reality and you just act upon it. And sometimes you burn your hands and you learn then, oh yeah, shouldn't touch the fire. The problem is, as a child, whenever you get confronted with a certain situation, you always try and find the problem in yourself. You don't really have the ability to reflect and to project. So if your father, your mother, or your teacher, or your family, or your friends do things that fuck you over, even though you did something that you thought was fine, you don't look at the problem in them, but you look at the problem in you. And this can create a really strong disconnect with reality as a child, where you start adopting these programs where you can treat the judgment of your environment judging you, saying, oh, you got to do better, you got to do that, you got to do that, and you don't really understand why the fuck you got to do that. You find a way of dealing with their judgment by finding excuses. And they work. If you say like, oh yeah, you gotta go to school, I feel sick, oh it works, well, you just learn a process. And children and people in general are quite emotionally intelligent beings, and this process of making excuses becomes more and more advanced. And as you grow older and become more and more mentally capable by the more advanced parts of your brain developing, you start gaining the ability to project. And before, when you couldn't really do that, the people around you, they're assholes and whatever, you think it's your fault. Your intentions are pure. But as you grow older and you have the ability to project, the moment when your intentions don't become pure anymore is when you start realizing that the people around you aren't so right at all. You start looking like, oh, maybe my teacher wasn't right. Maybe my parents were wrong in that situation. Maybe my friends were wrong in that situation. You start understanding that people might be wrong. And the reason why you say they're wrong is because you connect it to reality. You see, they say one thing and they do another. It doesn't match. It doesn't jive. They do stuff that goes against their own sense of reality. But the problem is, if you have developed an entire tool set of excuses, you just start getting more and more buried down into them and use them as a way of navigating life, even though on a fundamental level you know that you're actually joining the dark side of making shit up, making excuses up, and just being irresponsible. Because that's what it is. On a fundamental level, it's all about responsibility, being responsible for the consequences of your actions. That's really what it boils down to. As a child, it's also a process where you try to learn this relationship between action and consequences, but as you grow older, it's more one where you just behave on what you have learned. And if you know that you are irresponsible and you can use an excuse to justify that, then you basically constantly ping to other people to calibrate your sense of responsibility, even though you know yourself what truly responsible means. This is also something that I tell when people come over here, because this is basically the essence of the problem. If you calibrate your sense of responsibility with people around you, it brings about validation seeking, social anxiety, afraid of judging, but also at the same time, you do the same to other people. And it's really a very dysfunctional relationship, because at the end of the day, reality is just what it is. Your opinions, beliefs, and feelings are irrelevant in the face of reality. They're only relevant to the extent that they have a positive impact on the world. But if you're just having feelings, opinions, and beliefs that have no real impact, no real reality foundation, then it's just bullshit. It's just excuses, and you know that. The reason why this approach is so powerful is because everybody knows what I'm talking about, and is using these gymnastics, these brain gymnastics all the time in their environment, in their life, because they're the best thing they got. They work within the setting of intersubjectivity, but they do not work within reality. and you just try to keep it up, and you try to just delay your consequences and stuff and not try to face it and all that shit, but you don't know deep inside that your actions have consequences and you just have to act upon it. And that's what growing up is. You're not a kid anymore. When you're a child, sure, you don't understand the dynamic, you don't understand this relationship, you just learn and you take everything with a spoon. But as you grow older and you gain your own ability to reflect and think, you can justify yourself to your own sense of responsibility, and doing so doesn't require you to ping on people around you. Of course, when you grow up in a society, in an environment where that is really central, judging you, you start feeling like being responsible is almost like a bad word. Even though when you just look at it, it's just doing what you gotta do, and it's not something you gotta do because of people expecting it from you or people telling you to do it. It's just stuff you do because you know it's what it is. Your actions have consequences. That's it. When we grow up, we always get these things we gotta do from society, from our environment. You gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do that. And we gotta do so much nonsensical stuff that we really find this coping mechanism of excuses to shield us of that shit. But as we grow older, we keep using it even for things that are right. And we know that. We start using it to justify our bad habits. We start using it to justify our way of hurting others and all that shit. And we know better. And that's the thing, we're not a kid anymore. If you're a kid, you don't know any better. If you're not a kid anymore, you can reflect and project and know what is right and wrong, then you do know better and you got to act upon it. And anything that stops you from doing so is just merely an excuse, and you know this. And that is why being able to just ping to your own sense of responsibility, where you just look at what consequences do my actions have, and studying that relationship, the strongest way is through scientific method, is just through logic. You just see the consequences and build a trust relationship on these pattern recognition is the best way of going about that. And by doing so, it makes you more and more right action. But at the same time, if you grow up and you learn that your parents, for example, always take care of you, then for you it's a sense of I'm being taken care of by my parents. So if they do stuff that is also flawed, then you just adopt them because you have a trust relationship, because the experience, the reality you experience is one where their end of their opinion and the judgment seems to bring about a better alternative than you following back on your own sense of understanding reality. But that's because you're too young. And as you grow older and you then have to go on your own feet and stuff, and your parents say like, yeah, you got to grow up, you got to be responsible. A lot of people fall into an identity crisis because they don't know what to trust. They don't know what to fall back on. And that's the thing. Everybody knows that they can fall back on reality itself and even logic and science. But the problem is, if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't really gone through it yourself, and your environment is constantly pulling you the other way, you start losing trust in that. Although that is why these insights and these talks can be very helpful, but more importantly than anything I say, coming over here and actually acting upon your sense of responsibility and just doing it and seeing that it works really creates a very strong relationship and trust with logic, and brings about a paradigm where you can truly fall back on yourself and really grow as a person. That's why even people that came over here that have quite a lot of issues with social anxiety or quite validation seeking, it's quite liberating to be here and really be told like, listen, people around you, they don't judge you. You're just here, you're doing what you do, and you only have to justify and explain yourself towards yourself, and that's it. But if you make excuses, you will just fall through and you will get kicked out. You just do what you gotta do because you know what is right, and don't make any fucking excuses. And if you have this liberty to do so, then it's very enriching, because I understand a lot of people in their own environment, when they want to even try to stop smoking, they have their friends going like, come on man, no you shouldn't, or whatever. They really try to pull you, so they have their own excuse, because whenever you live a responsible life, it's another reason that other people cannot make an excuse for, because you lead by example. And the strongest excuse people can give is point fingers, it's judge. And if you can't do that anymore, people feel more uncomfortable. But the thing is, like, if you don't go through the process of acting right because of judging and for the eyes of others, but because you see and understand what is right, it's actually quite a relieving and a quite fulfilling and purposeful, meaningful mindset. And that's what people actually just here not learn, but get to grow into. Because you already know this. You don't even have to learn this. You already know this. And being here really helps you tremendously, because conditioning is merely learning the programs that connect actions with the consequences. If you see how your environment, how much it actually steers you into adopting certain trust relationship with what works, being in an environment like this is very, very important and can really do a lot. And also creating a movement and find like-minded people, you just get to see how important it is, because you put yourself in an environment where you can ping to a sense of responsibility for yourself that is compatible with your environment and doesn't require too much resistance. And it's something you guys understand and know. And that's why saying like, oh yeah, I'll do it just by myself at home, for big part that's just bullshit, because you'll just after 1 day or 2 days or even a few weeks fall back in your shitty patterns, because you need to be very mindful and very fucking aware and very insightful to have logic as your core value and fall back on that all the time. And you know that on a fundamental level, you're much more impulsive. You just go with the flow, and being in an environment like this really is the best way for you to actually roll into it, which is a responsibility. It's just something you do because it's the right thing to do. You can't come over here and go like, oh yeah, you guys are going to take care of me. No, you come over here to be responsible and be surrounded with people that are responsible, and you don't ping to other people. I'm not your boss. Nobody's your boss. You're your own boss. And that is what growing up is. That's what not being a kid is anymore. You just take responsibility for the own actions you do, and that's how easy it is. If you make a mess, you fix it. It's that simple, and it's a really very powerful way of life, because it is what life is at the end of the day. You don't live to go against life itself. That's inconsistent. You live to help life grow. And the sense of consistency is something where you understand that actions and the consequences cannot go against what you are. And that is something we do all the time. Well, society does it all the time. We literally live in a culture where people learn how to be dysfunctional. And this is not just a way out. This is just a way to redeem yourself and start being responsible and stop bullshitting yourself. Because it is all bullshit. And that's why the people even that come over here and that end up being here are the ones that just been looking at the stream a lot, been making excuses. I've already had a talk with a guy here that like yesterday just arrived. It's quite relieving to just be able to do what's responsible, but only if you ping to your own sense of responsibility and you stop bullshitting yourself. Just getting rid of all the bullshit, all the excuses is quite liberating, and knowing that people won't judge you and you can just really find your way sincerely with true intentions to do what's right. It's just great, because that's what life is at the end of the day, and that's what people have the ability to do here. This is literally a service. I mean, what we do is such a fucking insane service for people, because we just create a framework where people can just align themselves with reality without fearing to be judged and be pulled apart, because there is a part in you that wants to do that. It really makes you complete. It takes care of your duality, your inner conflict, but it also requires to get rid of all these bullshit, stupid, shitty excuse mechanisms that you're constantly using, which includes judging other people, which includes making excuses, feeling bad for yourself, or saying, oh, it's about me. No, it's not about you. Life ain't about you. Life is about life itself, and we're just part of a bigger picture, and that's how simple it is. If it wasn't for your parents and the parents of your parents taking care of you, you wouldn't even exist. It is more than about you, and it's not because society tells you so that you can use it as an excuse, because you know it yourself as well. Deep inside, you know it. Your actions have consequences, and that's it. Being in this environment really allows you to just be responsible, and we are working on trying to create a better framework for this movement, because I see that it's working and this is really going places. So I'm really quite excited about it. We're working on an app that will connect people as well. But of course, being here is by far the best thing you can do, but we are also going to try to see how we can, create a network so people can be in touch and find like-minded people to be responsible. And that also means just no excuses. And I was giving a list of excuses where, for example, judging others, pitying yourself, making excuses, saying it's about you, saying I don't feel like it. Fuck you. It doesn't matter whether you feel like it or not. Reality is reality. Actions have consequences, and you know that. Just settling with what you have, I think it's also a big one. People really have the tendency to just go I can't change, or I'm too old, or whatever. It's just bullshit, and you guys know it. Your brain has the ability to shape and strengthen itself and learn so much. When you go lift in a fitness center, you don't go I can't carry 100 kilograms. No, you build it up. You try harder. Same with someone that goes through a blood clot or something and loses part of their body because a part of the brain dies and they have to walk again or speak again. It's much harder to learn that again than to just take your responsibility, because it really requires constantly rewiring your brain and really requires so much damn effort. The thing is that even though we know science shows you can learn how to walk again, and there's been really crazy things in that regards, you still have people, and it's the ones that never end up walking again, or the ones that say I can't. And honestly, when you really are very honest to yourself, it's because it's an excuse. because you know you can. You know reality is what it is. Same with religion, same with all these beliefs. Deep inside, when there's a discrepancy between what you believe and the consequences of your action, it doesn't match. You know you're bullshitting yourself because you know that your understanding doesn't cover it. And that's the beauty of logic. That's the beauty of science, is it's always matches. You just do what you can do, and if something is flawed, you just learn and you adopt and you change the model. But if you start just being stuck and believing something and think this is it, you can't just grow and get better and be better. You just try to settle for what you have, and it's just one of the worst excuses of society. It's not about whether you can do better, because you can. It's about how do you do better. And that's literally my life in a nutshell. I've always woken up thinking, how do I do better? How do I do better? I never just settle with what I have. Whether I was making fucking $1,000 a day playing poker, I didn't say like, oh yeah, now I'm good. No, fuck that shit. I always wonder, how can I do better? I keep walking, try to walk, try to stand up, start running. Like, I always try to do better and better and better. And that's what we are. That's what life is. We keep trying to do that, and doing so brings us our ability to bring great things for all of us, allow us to overcome certain, obstacles that we face with reality when it comes down to cancer or health or science or technology. Like, all these things allow us to, overcome, because we can do better. We can understand. We can keep going. And this mindset turns you literally from a passive consumer, someone that is actually going to achieve jack shit, to someone that is an entrepreneur, a visionary, someone that really changes the world. And you guys know this. There is no difference between me and you. The only difference is that I ain't making bullshit excuses. I'm telling you guys, it's now there. It's exposed. You guys understand it. You guys understand the relationship. You just do what you do, and you take responsibility, and that's basically it. And people that want to apply, just do it. It's very easy. And I know, like, people sometimes just in the chat say stuff, and I don't even read the chat. Well, I do read the chat, but I don't even give it any weight, because you guys understand what I'm saying. You got to understand that I know that you know this is true. Your actions have consequences. I know all of them. Whether you're religious or whatever, you know that. You understand that. Because that's what life is. Cause and effect, action, reaction. It's literally the fabric of life. That's what it's built on. And on pattern recognition through DNA, instincts, and now also reason. It's all that simple when you boil it down. And you guys know this shit. So use your knowledge and act upon it, because that's what being responsible is. And it doesn't mean acting up someone, what other people say. It's about your own understanding. Maybe when you're a kid, that's the case, but you've grown up. You're not a kid anymore. Grow up, be mature, be an adult, start doing what is responsible, and start doing it now. Don't make excuses. And I can rant about this all day long, but man, don't even whine in the chat. It's an excuse. You know that this is true. When you start playing games and all that shit, the need for distraction, all that shit, you know it's just bullshit. It's an excuse for an excuse for an excuse. You know what to do. You know what being responsible is. Just do what is responsible. And coming over here is, for almost everybody that's watching the stream, the best thing you can do. Society definitely is part of the equation, but you know better. You're old enough to know better. So don't blame the government, don't blame your friends, don't blame your environment, don't blame society. You know better now. It's all an excuse. Just do what you gotta do. Done. Take responsibility. What you have is the following, like, what it is about is when you grow older, right? You always, when you're a child and something goes wrong or whatever, the reality that you live in, you really see your parents as the heroes in your life. And as you grow older, it translates into having this childlike mindset where the world is just unchangeable. And as a result, you have a really very easy time to point out like, oh yeah, it's the government, it's this, it's that, it's that. But on an essential level, it's really because you're just being a kid. You're being childish. You are not truly growing up. You're not taking responsibility for your actions. And when people say like, yeah, what am I going to do there or whatever, like, it's bullshit. Figuring out what to do and taking responsibility for it is really a big part of what growing up is. Being in this environment allows you to do so in one of the most non-duality way that is possible. Because if you go about it in the real world, then it's like, oh, you go to university, right? Or you go to school, or you gotta find a job. It's all so meaningless and so focused and central around yourself. It doesn't really clear cut the purpose from a bigger picture where you try to contribute to the world. And that's why people tend to, have this confusion, even though when they just ask themselves the question, I mean, you are here, you don't know what to do, go to Kaufland, work a 9-to-5 job and donate it to charity. That's more impactful than what you're doing. And if you are seeing that reality, you'll be damn sure trying to, do better. And that's the thing, like also with me when I was playing poker. Why did I start playing poker and make money? Because all the alternatives were worse. So if you're here and say like you have nothing to do, like literally nothing, hypothetical, crazy, surreal, alternative universe, 9-to-5 job, donate to charity, easy. Or do some internet job where you translate words all day long and donate it all to charity. Even that, it has more impact. What are people applying for? People are applying to come over here to work in this environment, to be responsible. Not to work for me, but to work for their sense of responsibility. Because that's something that a lot of people don't understand. And let me define really properly what responsibility is. When you go through life is merely cause and effect, action, reaction. So you learn as you grow up a relationship between your actions and the consequences of your actions. And the more this pattern is predictable, the more you gain control, the more you feel trust. And if it means your parents are the ones that are taking care of you and are causing this relationship to be very at ease, you will trust your parents and you will even do what they say. Even if they say stuff that doesn't make so much sense, you will still do it. You will try to find excuses though, because that's a mechanic that you have learned in this culture of excuses. But understanding the relationship between your action and consequences is extremely important. It's what life is. It's even in the DNA. It's in the DNA, it's in our culture, it's in our understanding of science, it's in logic, it's in math. It's just understanding the relationship between action and consequences. And the more accurate it is, the more you can predict. The more accurate your pattern recognition is, the more you can predict and the more you can actually be a step ahead. Problem though is that we live in a society where the best thing you got as you grow up is the intersubjectivity. The government is the one taking care of you, your parents is taking care of you, other people's beliefs seem to be very real to you. So we get this flawed sense of reality where we think the objective reality and the intersubjective reality, so what people actually value, is the same thing. Paper just becomes very valuable because it turns into money and you really think it has value, even though the value only exists in people's minds. Even though in reality, it's merely paper. It's what you can buy for it that has the value, food and all that stuff. So what we get is we grow up in this really meta layer of society where we get to lose touch with reality because you have this intersubjective layer in between. Even though we know we have this connection with reality all the time because every single breath we take is a proof of it. We understand we gotta eat, we understand we gotta sleep, we understand our actions have consequences, but within this entire meta layer, and definitely as a kid, as you grow up, as a kid, when there is shit happening that doesn't make sense, where reality doesn't really, match with your understanding and how people react, you start trying to find coping mechanisms. You make excuses because when your father or when your teacher is mad at you when you're a kid, you think it's your own fault. You don't have this ability, this strong, intelligent ability to project and stuff. And you just learn the coping mechanisms that other people use. If you see other people around you starting using excuses, you start adopting it. You start literally learning it. But then you grow older. You grow older, your prefrontal cortex gets more developed and stuff, and you start being able to project. And you understand at that point that people are wrong. You understand that your teachers weren't always right, your parents weren't always right, and that's where you become a rebel, on your puberty. But at the same time, these excuses are damn handy. You start identifying with them, they become more and more part of your life. They screw you over, they create your misery, they create all the suffering, human-caused suffering in the world, but on a certain level, you're fine with it. Not because it's right, not because it's real, but because you're pinging to the people around you to find out and figure out your moral compass, which is the problem to begin with. Okay, if when you're a kid, I can understand it, but as you grow up, it's bullshit. That's why you care so much about validation. Validation is really, really important. What you do is you become validation seeker. You really care about what other people think, but then you start realizing, but wait a minute, it's all just an act. People are just all pretending. So you just start less and less pretending. You stop caring as you grow older. And then you start more and more just snug into your little comfort bubble and just settle with what you got, with all the bullshit excuses. But it's all a lie and you know it. It's all bullshit and you know it. So you can break that cycle right now. You don't need to be enlightened. You don't need to have awareness. You just need to take responsibility. Something that you all have. And it's never enough. And coming over here is actually a good first step to do. It's a good first step, but it's not where it ends. Because your only person you have to explain yourself to is yourself. Your own sense of responsibility. And that's very easy to subtract. It's very easy to deduce. You just look at your actions, the consequences, and based on the knowledge that connects them both, you act upon it. If it's flawed, you just improve it. But you always look at reality. You always ping at reality because your beliefs, your emotions, your feelings, and your opinions are completely irrelevant. And you know that. It's all about reality. All these things, you just merely use them as an excuse because you know if reality is there, you just do what you gotta do. And that's the thing, like when I talk about these things, the reason why you understand and you know that this is how it is, it's because on a fundamental level, you have this relationship between action and consequences on lockdown. It's just you don't really always understand the patterns. And that's why, learning and growing your knowledge can be very handy. That's why logic is so powerful. And people here grow a lot because the bullshit is being taken away. The excuses is being taken away to really a fundamental level where you can't even point fingers to other people saying like, yeah, but he told me or he told me. No. Being responsible is being able to explain yourself to yourself and not make any fucking excuses. And everybody understands this. Normally the intersubjectivity is filled with bullshit and excuses. Here the intersubjectivity is trying to align itself with reality. Normally that would be what makes sense, right? Doesn't work like that. That's why being here is really good. And you don't even have to make the excuse like, I'll go there so I grow and this and that. No, it's not about you. You come here, you're responsible. That's it. You don't make excuses. You don't make any fucking excuses. You just do what you gotta do. And you say like, yeah, but what do I do? Yeah. You look at your actions, you look at the consequences, you try to be as responsible as possible. Try to have the biggest impact you can. We have some ideas that people can see and wonder, okay, this is maybe something that can help me have an impact and stuff. You start also being responsible also means taking care of yourself, You work out, eat healthy, you meditate. You can't even keep your shitty habits here up either, And honestly, all these excuses are so toxic. They're ruining your life and they're ruining the world, and you know that as well. There is no excuse, guys. You guys can come over. Everybody's welcome.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat.